Okay. So, Christoph, the stage is yours.
Okay. Let me just click this away. Okay. Yeah, it's lovely to see such a diverse, at least diverse in terms of location, such a diverse group of people coming together. This medium makes it possible. It makes it possible regardless of the strange times that probably all of us find ourselves in. My plan for today is I will briefly introduce myself. Most of you I haven't met. And then I would like to start with a brief meditation for about 10 minutes. And then I will talk what I have planned to talk about. And as Mirka said, we'll leave 15 minutes for questions, both on the actual topic or also maybe regarding the retreat, if anything comes up. Okay, so my name is Christoph Koeck. I was born in Vienna, where I live now. After I finished a kind of technical high school, I thought of traveling to Asia, to India more specifically, to already with the idea in mind to find some kind of possibility for mind training. I had a vague idea about yoga, a vague idea about meditation, not really any experience. So I went, I worked for some time in Germany to get the money together, and then I went to India and I came across a Vipassana retreat that was taught at that time by Joseph Goldstein, some American teachers, so James Barras and Munindraji was still alive at that time. And these 2 weeks really, I could say, really transformed my life, or at least I knew what direction my life would take. I would want to go deeper into this practice. It made perfect sense in terms of both theory and practice. And after some more months in India and Sri Lanka in retreat centers and monasteries, I went back to Austria for a year to do my civil service, compulsory civil service in Austria. And after that, I decided, well, I want to go deeper into the practice. And I heard of the possibility to be a monk, to become a monk as a Westerner in Thailand or Sri Lanka or Burma. And I decided, yeah, I could do that for maybe 2 or 3 years. I wasn't really so much keen on being a monk. I was more keen on the actual practice. And then I went to Thailand and had a look around what possibilities there were. And I came across this community, Disciples of Ajahn Chah. And I decided this place is good enough for me to get started with the monk's life. And I ended up staying for 17 years, about 12 of those in Thailand. And I had 3 years in England and 2 years in Switzerland, also a little bit of time in Burma and India in between. And after this time, I decided to leave the monkhood. It was not a crisis of faith, nor was it a crisis in monastic regarding monastic life. I just had enough, and I was longing for a relationship. And so I decided to leave. That was the end of 2000. And since that time, I'm back in Vienna, and pretty soon I started to teach meditation and Buddhism in various contexts. And I started a psychotherapy training. So now I've been working as a psychotherapist in private practice for a number of years. And I also trained in MBSR and MBCT. So I know about this sort of approach, the more what's sometimes called the secular approach to mindfulness, which for me is basically just a different language. It's in essence, I don't really see a difference. It's just using a different language. So now I'm sitting in my little box in Vienna, behind my screen, seeing all of you from different countries. Very, very pleasant always to be able to meet like this. And for the beginning of the input, I would like to invite you for maybe 10 minutes of meditation, and I will speak a few words during the meditation, so to get us settled and get us into the territory of the foundations of mindfulness. Good. So wherever you are, wherever you sit, if you're comfortable with closing your eyes, you may close your eyes. Or if you're comfortable with having your eyes slightly open, that's absolutely fine. And as we do in the beginning of a meditation, it's good to consciously, as it were, switch the mode of our being, switching the mode of our attention from doing things, from going towards certain experiences to more kind of tuning into our feeling nature, tuning into the possibility of just getting interested in what's happening when we sit quietly and notice what shows up, what's there. And we can always tune into different dimensions of experience. The dimension of body as a directly, immediately felt experience of contact with the surface, with the chair or the cushion, hands, the warmth or the coolness in different parts of the body. And establishing ourselves in this reflective attitude of, oh yeah, there is this, there is body, feels like this. And we can also tune into the dimension of the mood, or the emotional quality, the mind state, just very generally. It's not as obvious as body, but still we can notice, are we tired or awake, rather calm, or maybe restless, maybe quite happy, content, or sad or uneasy through some experience we might have had. Just allowing maybe the answer to the question of, well, how am I? Let this be felt, this sense of the mood, the mind state. And often nothing particularly becomes apparent, that's fine. And there is also the dimension of thought, of the cognitive aspect of our experience, imagining, planning, remembering. Now again, it's much more elusive than body sensations, but still very real. Maybe fragments of thought popping up, images floating through awareness. And we can also say, there is that. There are thoughts, there are images. And then we can go back to the dimension of body. The body grounds us in the present. Inviting a sense of peace. It might not be altogether pleasant to feel the body, but allowing a sense of making peace with how it is right now as much as possible. And encouraging to let the whole of the body be felt, as it were, filling out this physical form with awareness through the limbs, the feet, the hands, the legs, the arms, the trunk with the pelvis, the belly, the chest, the shoulders, the neck, and the head, with the face, and consciously letting the body rest in the position that you're in, sitting very quietly, very still, and kind of listening with the whole body. The body is like a big sense organ. And we allow this natural sensitivity of the body to do its thing, to really inviting this whole body awareness, moment by moment by moment. And as we quietly sit and listen with every cell of our bodies, we can tune into the experience of breathing, breath, always there. Whether we feel good, we breathe. We feel bad, we breathe. We're awake, we breathe. We sleep, we breathe. Breath connecting us with the world, taking in the air, the oxygen from outside into our bodies, letting these bodies be nourished and letting go of the out-breath. Breathing in, breathing out. We can become aware. Is it quite easy or inviting to be with the breath? Or is the mind wandering? We just notice. Getting interested, not just in the breath, but in the whole process of trying to be with the breath. Just very curiously and gently using the theme of breathing in and breathing out, of collecting moments of relative peace, relative clarity. We can ask ourselves, do we feel generally okay? Is it pleasant to sit here? How is it pleasant if it is? Is it unpleasant? How is it unpleasant? Just more, not so much thinking about, but feeling into it and making space for that dimension of pleasant, unpleasant. Staying tuned into breathing in, breathing out. The quality of our attention, is it easy to be with the breath? Is it difficult? What makes it difficult if it is? If it's easy, then allowing to go deeper, let the mind be even clearer and calmer. The breath is like a doorway, towards both calm and clarity. No need to struggle. Okay. I guess all of you are involved in some form of mindfulness-based interventions, MBSR, MBCT, or whatever else there might be. So I don't think I have to convince you of the value of mindfulness. So it's more about maybe, say, speaking from my background, having a lot of Buddhist background, early Buddhist background, I should say. And when I was asked to think about a theme for the retreat, I thought that might be a possibility to bring in or connect traditional Buddhist concept of the 4 foundations of mindfulness with maybe more secular understanding of mindfulness. And I see we won't have a lot of time to go deeply into it, but just to familiarize you, if you're not familiar with some aspects of these teachings on the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It is an interesting fact that when one looks at the body of Buddhist scriptures, even early Buddhist scriptures, there's not a lot of very explicit meditation instruction. There is a lot of say psychological or philosophical aspects, ethical teachings. And the Buddha, at least how his teachings came down to us, was not a lot into meditation techniques, meditation methods. It was more seen in the light of that meditation as a tool for growth. And that's actually a word that's really directly taken from the context of early Buddhist teachings, is this word bhavana. It gets often translated as meditation, but bhavana actually means development. So seen like that, that meditation is a tool to for educating our minds, educating our hearts, educating our bodies even. Yeah, it's a whole kind of personality development towards, of course, in the service of lessening stress, lessening suffering, in the service of developing our capacity to live peacefully, to live joyfully, to live with understanding and wisdom. And why I'm saying this is that I feel it's important to understand that if one understands what meditation is for, what its purpose is, where it goes, sort of what it is supposed to be aiming at, then one is much more free in the approach of choosing what's helpful and what is not helpful. And coming to the 4 foundations of mindfulness, you find in all traditions, it doesn't matter whether it's in all wisdom traditions, a certain maps of what human experience is. Say, when I began the meditation today, I briefly guided you through the dimension of body, the dimension of the mind state or the emotional quality, and the dimension of the cognitive activity, the thinking and imagining. And this is a very simple and a very useful map that you are probably quite familiar with through mindfulness-based interventions. That's often what sort of you check in with yourself. Okay, body, what does that feel like? Okay, emotional quality, okay, like that. Thinking, yeah, thoughts running through my mind, yeah. So that would be like a kind of a map. And there's all kinds of maps around, and even in the early Buddhist tradition, there is different maps. And one can understand 4 foundations of mindfulness as a kind of map. It's not the only possible map, but it's a map that has its uses. And here today, I'm not sure how much I will have time to get into specific uses, but certainly that will be more topic on the retreat. Why especially this particular map? So to familiarize you with the territory, the 4 foundations are body in different aspects. I will come to it in a second. Then there is feeling tone, and feeling tone is a specific dimension of experience, which is kind of, you could say, a rudimentary resonance towards resonance responding to experience, to sensory experience, and sensory including thoughts and emotions. So whenever we see something, hear something, feel something with the body, or smell something, or even think something, there is always, on a very rudimentary level of experience, a response in terms of, this feels good, oh, this is unpleasant, or don't know, it's kind of neutral. And this is a very basic strata of experience, you might say. And I will come to that in a minute in more detail. Then there is what's called the mind state. In the original term, it's called the chitta, and chitta is sometimes translated as awareness. And this has different functions. And in this foundation of mindfulness, it's becoming aware of the climate of the mind. You know, when the climate, in a sense of that our mind is not just aware, but this awareness is often influenced or conditioned by certain qualities. So we can be quite sad, and then, you know, we look at the world through the awareness tainted or colored by sadness, or we are very happy, you know, then our experience might be quite different. So the mind state is like, as it were, the felt center of our experience, through which we experience ourselves and the world. And of course, very important to get a sense of awareness around how the glasses through which we look at the world are colored. And the 4th foundation is, in the original language, it's called the Dhammas, and that's a very wide, a term with a very wide range of meaning. And in this particular context, it means using specific categories of experience, particularly in terms of how they are useful or not useful in developing meditation, in developing well-being, and I guess a sense of growth on the path. There is a bit of a mix of these categories in this 4th foundation of mindfulness. I will just pick out a couple of them. I will go into that again in a minute, like factors that are hindering our progress and factors that are fostering or supporting our progress. In all of this, when one looks at how meditation is mostly approached in both traditional Buddhist, like early Buddhist context, I should say, and also in mindfulness-based interventions, the body is a great ally on this path, you know. And the body is a doorway to all other aspects, both in terms of meditational development, but also in terms of insight, and in terms of, you know, learning how to live our lives skillfully. In this aspect of mindfulness of the body, there is mentioned a number of themes. Most of you might not, or some of these themes might not be familiar to you. What's most prominent, and all of you are familiar with, is mindfulness of breathing, the breath being an aspect of bodily experience, and learning to use the breath both as an anchor to be more fully present, as a way to establish that quality of attentiveness that can be with something over time. Through that, we develop a sense of what comes in the way. You know, if we choose an object of attention, then we automatically become much more aware of, you know, what else goes on in our minds. And the breath is also which is maybe sometimes, and this can be discussed, but how important it is. But the breath is also a doorway to a sense of well-being. You know, if we learn to be with something like the breath, then a sense of natural well-being can arise. You know, and this is, particularly if one develops that kind of meditation, it's just a natural process. When the mind calms down a little bit, then this feels good. But it's a well-being that is not just a well-being that comes out of eating a delicious meal or watching a nice sunset, but it's a well-being that comes through just the mind settling into the present moment. In all these foundations of mindfulness, there is an aspect of, say, traditionally, this is called the calm, clear, well-being side of meditation and the insight part of meditation. The body is, of course, and that's, you find in other of these themes of mindfulness of the body, is also something that reminds us of, for one thing, of the conditioned nature of our lives. Say, for some of us, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, our bodies wasn't around. And it all started with, mom and dad being together, and a little kind of cell, a bunch of cells kind of growing inside our moms, and then we appear in the world, get born in a world that we didn't choose, with a body that we didn't choose. Maybe at the age of 2 or 3, we start, or maybe 1, 2, we start saying, oh, I, me, and we are little, and now we are big, and we're getting older. And of course, mindfulness of the body is also being aware of the nature of this body, like both the nature that it's of the nature to get sick and die eventually, which of course is not joyful news for most of us, but it's a reality. So it also, bodies are needy. We always need something. We sit still for a little while, we need to move. Then we don't eat for a while, we get hungry, then we eat, maybe we feel too full. Then we get tired, we need to sleep, then we wake up, then lying down gets boring, we need to get up, we need to go to the toilet, eat again, and then we need to breathe in, and then breathing in, we had enough, we breathe out again. So the body is a restless thing. So mindfulness of the body, I see the time is moving on, and we want to have some time for questions. So it's not just using bodily sensed experience as a foundation to develop meditation, which is of course an important part, but the body teaches us many things about life, about the fragility of life, but also how we can, live more easefully and peacefully within this physical condition of bodily life. So in the traditional sequence, there's also contemplation of the elementary quality of the body, learning to deconstruct the body in terms of body being an assemblage of parts. This can be a reflection. There is also the recollection of death. You know, the body is subject to die, and how much we will go into this on the retreat is I don't have a clear plan yet. I will probably deepen this a little bit, but even on a retreat we won't have it's not good to bring in too much into too little time. Let me go to the next category. That's feeling. And you're probably all aware, if you teach MBSR, class 2, class 3, collecting pleasant experiences, unpleasant experiences. It's not many things that are explicit in early Buddhist tradition is implicit in the MBSR. So that's another reason why it can be helpful for, if you teach MBSR, MBCT, to have some grounding in Buddhist thinking or Buddhist psychology or Buddhist meditation theory. And as I said before, feeling tone is like a very basic resonance towards experience in terms of pleasant, unpleasant. And sometimes it's helpful to think evolutionary. Evolution probably has invented feeling tone to help us. You know, if you're a little cell swimming in the archetypical or the archaic ocean, and maybe the water gets a bit too salty, then you swim away. It's unpleasant feeling, and then the water gets nice, right temperature, right saltiness, and yeah. So feeling tone is in a way a guide, you know, a guide to help us to be aware of dangers and look for what's nourishing. The problem with feeling tone is sometimes we misunderstand it. On the one hand, if we try to manipulate and control our lives, so we just have pleasant feelings, pleasant feeling tones, good luck. You know, it's not possible. So a certain degree of unpleasantness is part of life on this planet, you know, in the human realm. So learning to be aware of feeling tone, and one can specifically tune into that dimension of our experience, is very useful to understand, you know, to give the right place. You know, where do we seek pleasure? You know, where do we avoid pain, and how wise is it to do that? You know, a certain amount of pleasure is important, you know, and too much pain is, of course, not as much as possible to avoid it, but to learn to be with feeling tone in a more mindful way is very conducive to a life with less fear, you know, because we always, implicitly or explicitly, you know, we're afraid of pain and we're afraid to lose that which is pleasant. So that would be one very concrete benefit of, you know, learning to understand feeling tone. Then there is feeling tone often conditions our thinking and our mind states. And the next one is mind state. And I realize time is flying by, so I will keep it short. As I said before, the mind state is like something that conditions all of our experience. You know, how we feel in terms of our emotional quality is very decisive or definitive in terms of how we would say how happy or unhappy I am, how well I am or how unwell I am. You know, if there is mind states of a lot of frustration and disappointment and anger and fear. All these have a certain, it's a big topic, of course. All these have a certain logic on their own, but it's important to understand mind states, and to learn to navigate and to foster mind states that are positive, that are useful, that are conducive to a happy life. And the awareness of mind state is sometimes thought, well, it's how can the mind know itself? But of course, the mind is not a single thing. The mind has different functions, and one of the functions is just knowing, and we can know our mind state. Yeah, that's important to enhance our freedom. And the fourth category would be different different categories of experience that are useful to investigate. One of these categories is how they called the hindrances, and traditionally they are called sensual desire, aversion, restlessness, dullness, and obsessive doubt. And I can't get into the argument why exactly are they hindrances, but I just state as a premise that hindrances are those things that hinder the mind from seeing clearly, that hinder the mind from dwelling in a sense of clarity and well-being. And in this category of foundation of mindfulness, it's not just being aware of hindrances, but it's also being aware of how they arise and how we can use skillful means to free ourselves from these hindrances. And the opposite would be a category called the enlightenment factors. It sounds very fancy, but these are factors that are conducive to our wakefulness, to our living well in this life. And this is mindfulness is the basic one. Then there is investigation, our capacity to understand, to search, to explore, to investigate. Then there is energy or engagement, our capacity to make a difference in the flow of our experience. Then there is joy. Joy is a very important quality, that we feel a sense of satisfaction, a sense of pleasure, a sense of enthusiasm for what we're doing. And then there is relaxation or stillness, sometimes translated concentration, or actually concentration is not the best translation. It's kind of like a collectedness, a gatheredness of the mind coming together, unification. And then equanimity would be the seventh factor of enlightenment. So as a foundation of mindfulness, we can choose to pay attention to specific qualities in our experience and learn how to deal with them skillfully if they are hindering qualities, and how to nourish them when they are wholesome qualities. So this was a brief going through these four foundations of mindfulness. I'm aware this is a huge topic, and but just to give you an overview, and in terms of the retreat, I'm planning to deepen these with some theoretical input, but also, of course, with hopefully a lot of practice. That would be the plan. Okay, so we'll have a few minutes if there are any comments, questions, doubts. Don't hold back. No question is too simple or too stupid to be asked, please. And you can just raise your hand or unmute yourself.
Thank you, Christoph.
Yeah, please, Sasha.
Christoph, thank you very much for this presentation, which I was really hoping to hear for quite some time. And this whole idea of actually exploring this deeper for Foundations of Mindfulness in the retreat, it's a very, very inviting for me. I think I have at this point more a very practical, so I apologize to my friends from all over Europe for asking. But for us who have certain family obligations like carers and stuff, is it possible still to take part on daily basis, knowing that we won't be able to maybe keep the silence and there will be some additional activity that we'll have to do in terms of that? So that would be my question.
I don't know how Martin did it last year, but I am quite aware that if people are at home and want to participate in the retreat, that for some of you it will be difficult to have a real retreat in terms of keeping silent and not engaging in anything else. So I would say if you can manage to at least participate in most of the group sessions, and of course it would be good to be there for instruction and the talk. And otherwise, if you have to take care of your family a little bit, I personally think it would be fine still to participate, because the online format makes it possible to do it in different ways. And I personally would be open. I'm not sure what Lot, who organizes this thing, thinks, but I would be open. If you can manage to be there most of the time, when we are together online, then I would say it's okay even if you can't be completely silent or have other things to do in the breaks.
I think all eyes are at Lot now.
Okay.
No, they're not. All eyes are on Christoph. No, if that's what you say, then that's how we work, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's better to make it explicit, because or otherwise, people do it anyway and maybe feel bad about it. So I think it's realistic to do it that way. Of course, I mean, Mirka told me before the session that she rented a place where she was on her own, and she found it was a very deep retreat, just online, but being on her own in silence. So there's that would be, of course, ideal if you can have that. But if you can't, I wouldn't make it a condition for not participating if you can't fully maintain the silence.
Thank you. Count me in.
Okay, great. Please, Jochen.
Will you be all on your own for the meditations, or will there be like partners around for some parts of the morning or evening meditations? I don't remember how it was last year with Martin.
I won't have any like official assistance, but there will be. It depends a little bit on how many participants there will be. I will probably have some help with interviews. If there is a lot of participants, I will not be able to speak with everybody myself. In terms of instruction and guidance, I plan to do it on my own. Yeah, I'm quite used to teach on my own. I really appreciate to teach in the team, but I think for this retreat it wasn't planned to be a teamwork.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Christoph. Hi. Thank you for this. You mentioned the aspect of cultivating well-being, and then there is the aspect of insight. So this question is emanating from the fact that I was teaching MBSR, and now I learning to do MBCT, so it's my 5th course, and I'm noticing there is quite an emphasis on, softening the aversion, and there is less the cultivation of wholesome quality. There is not,
Yeah.
I understand everything, so if you work with this specific public, probably you don't want to create even more incapacity of expressing that or feeling that. So all fine. Yeah. And yet I sense that the weight is too much on this, the aversion, noticing the aversion. So the nutrition, nourishing part is coming in session 7. So a bit too late for some people. I sense that we need a bit more of well-being, so that also there is motivation for that. So could you explore a bit more about this difference, about the nourishing part, the cultivation of well-being, and then the insight. So where they come into MBIs in balance. That's what I feel now. It's a bit unbalanced. That's from my personal impression. Thank you.
I think this is a very, very good question, and very important to think about didactics, like in terms of what's useful. So the problem with talking too much about well-being is that if people don't feel well, they feel easily excluded, and it can lead to a kind of, sometimes a kind of too much positive thinking, and also maybe approaching meditation more as a kind of an auto-suggestive technique. So now we all sit here and we breathe and we feel well. But on the other hand, if one doesn't sort of at all emphasize, for one thing, where the practice is going to, and also that is sometimes, I think, maybe a myth in secular mindfulness, that mindfulness is just observing, just observing what is. But mindfulness, definitely, certainly in the early Buddhist approach, and also how I teach MBSR is, and implicitly it's there anyway, is also consciously inviting qualities. These are all there as potential within us. And just as an example, when I sometimes begin a meditation, just imagine, not forcing or anything, just imagine what it would be like, the mind free of longing, content, the mind free of aversion, just friendly, the mind free of restlessness, at ease, calm, the mind free of dullness, just awake, alert, the mind free of doubt, confident. What would that be like? And then often, oh yeah, I never thought it possible, but yeah, I can get a sense of that. Yeah, I never thought of it. So sometimes skillfully, actually, showing possibilities, I think is a useful approach also. And in terms of how to teach an MBCT course, as useful as it is to stick with certain structures, but sometimes I think it is important to get a sense of what's needed, what's helpful, and sometimes it can be, look, guys, there are great fruits out there waiting to be picked up. Be glad you're on the way. Something. I'm joking, but so it's good to trust your intuition, what's helpful. Okay.
Well, I'm afraid we've got time for one last question.
Okay.
Okay. So it looks like we do not have any more questions.
Yeah, fine.
Well, if we do, maybe there are some questions hanging, but there is no time there. I hope you will be able to ask them during the retreat. You will be able to ask Christoph about pending questions during the retreat. Christoph, thank you very much for sharing such a wide content. I don't know how about you. I'm left with a lot of questions or themes to think about.
Mhm.
So thank you very much. It was very rich. And I hope to see you all on a retreat. Well, I won't be able to participate then on a spot in Germany, but I would be online, so I hope to see your faces. Thank you very much. Thank you, Christoph.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Bye-bye. All the best for you.